Good morning everyone. So today we are going to discuss the electrolysis. It's one of the most important concept in electrochemistry class 12. So electrolysis. So before we start electrolysis, let us differentiate the substances into electrolytes and non-electrolytes. So substances we are differentiating into non-electrolytes and electrolytes. Yes, what is exactly non-electrolytes? Non-electrolytes are nothing but the substances which cannot or which do not allow the electricity to pass through it, or simply non-conductors, or the substances which cannot decompose into ions. That substances we call it as what? Non-electrolytes. So once again, the substances which do not allow the electricity to pass through them, that substances we call it as what? Non-electrolytes. Or the substances which do not ionize into ions, that substances we call it as what? Non-electrolytes. Most of the organic substances like urea, glucose, etc. These all are what? Non-electrolytes. They won't allow the electricity to pass through them. Coming to the next one, electrolytes. The substances which allow electricity to pass through them, that substances, or else the substances which can ionize into ions, that substances we call it as what? Electrolytes. Again, these electrolytes we further dividing into two types. One is strong electrolytes and the second one weak electrolytes. On what basis we are differentiating? As I told you already, electrolytes are nothing but they will dissociate into ions based upon the percentage of dissociation. Suppose if the electrolytes are completely dissociated, means 100% dissociation, degree of dissociation was 100%, the completely all substance, the whole substance will dissociate into ions. So here there was a complete dissociation where degree of dissociation was 100%. Then we call that substance as what? Strong electrolytes. So examples for the strong electrolytes, almost all strong acids and all strong bases and almost all salts are examples for strong electrolytes. Coming to the weak electrolytes. So weak electrolytes means they will dissociate into ions, but they will not 100% dissociation. So here degree of dissociation is between 0 to 100. Between 0 to 100 means it can be from 1 to 99. Okay, so here there was no complete dissociation, incomplete dissociation. Incomplete dissociation. So examples for the weak electrolytes, all weak acids, weak bases are the best examples for weak electrolytes. So this is what nature of the substances into electrolytes and non-electrolytes. Now move on to our concept, that is what? Electrolysis. What is exactly electrolysis? Electrolysis is nothing but, see in the name itself, electrolysis. Electro means by using electricity, lysis means cleavage or decomposition. So from this definition we can define electrolysis is nothing but the decomposition or deposition of electrolytes or substance, any other substance. Here we are taking electrolytes. The decomposition or deposition of electrolytes at electrodes by passing electricity through them. And that decomposition process we call it as what? Electrolysis. So if you pass the electricity through that electrolytic solution, that electrolyte will decompose or deposit at what? At where? At electrodes. And that process of decomposition or deposition of electrodes or electrolytes at electrodes by passing, see, without passing the electricity, we cannot deposit the substances at electrodes. So after we pass the electricity through the electrolytic solution, that electrolyte will go on a deposit at electrodes. And that process we call it as what? Electrolysis. See, the cells in which the electrolysis takes place, okay, that cells we call it as this and this cell where the electrolysis takes place, that cell we call it as what? Electrolytic cell. Electrolytic cell. What is the role of electrolytic cell? These electrolytic cells, they converts electrical energy into chemical energy. So what is the role of electrolytic cell? The electrolytic cells converts electrical energy into chemical energy. Previous classes we discussed electrochemical cells. What are electrochemical cells? Quite reverse of electrolytic cells. There the electrochemical cells converts chemical energy into electrical energy, whereas in electrolytic cells the electrical energy is converting into what? Chemical energy. Okay, now if we see the structure of the electrolytic cells, here in electrolytic cells we definitely need a source of EMF. Source of EMF is nothing but external battery. So in electrolytic cells need to take the source of EMF, that is battery. We must take the external help, that is what? Battery. We need to supply the electricity now. For supplying the electricity we need the source of EMF, that is what? Battery. So in battery, suppose if you take the battery, the electrode which was connected to the negative terminal of the battery, what we call that electrode? That is called cathode. And the electrode which was connected to the positive terminal of the battery, that electrode we call it as what? Anode. So the charges or the signs of the electrodes are different in case of electrolytic cells compared to the electrochemical cells. See, in electrolytic cell, the electrode which was connected to the negative terminal of battery, and that electrode we call it as what? Cathode. So cathode is having which charge? Negative charge. Okay, so cathode negative. Whereas the electrode which was connected to the positive terminal of the battery, that electrode we call it as what? Anode. Anode is positive. Okay, but in electrochemical cells, the electrode which was connected to the negative terminal of the battery we call it as what? Anode there, and positive terminal we call it as what? Cathode there. So quite reverse. The signs of the electrodes are different in case of electrolytic cells compared to the electrochemical cells. Don't be confused. Okay. See, next one. If you take processes at these electrodes, what processes takes place? At anode, suppose if you take the anode, at anode what will happen? Anode always, you remember, at anode always oxidation takes place. Oxidation takes place. If oxidation takes place, for example, if you take any substance, that is a M will be oxidizes into M plus N electrons, M plus N ions, and they liberates N electrons. So at anode which process takes place? At anode always oxidation process takes place. So here removal of electrons or gaining of electron, here M becoming M plus here means it is losing electrons. So So at anode always takes place, de-electronation takes place. So this process we call it as what? De-electronation. De-electronation. Next one, at cathode. At cathode what will happen? Always reduction takes place. Reduction takes place. There what happened? X plus n electrons, they gains the electrons and they becomes what? X minus n. Here loss of electrons, that is called de-electronation. Here reduction, that means gain of electrons. So this process we call it as what? Electronation process. Okay, once again, in electrolytic cells, negative terminal of the electrodes we call it as what? Cathode. Positive terminals we call it as what? Anode. At anode always oxidation takes place, de-electronation process takes place, whereas at cathode reduction takes place, electronation takes place. So by considering these all, if you draw the electrolytic cell, how it will looks? Let us do. See, this is what electrolytic cell. There 2 electrodes I have taken. Okay, and the electrode which was connected to, so this is external source, that is battery, and which was connected to negative terminal. So positive terminal if you take, connected to the positive terminal, what we call, that is anode. Here this is what? Anode. And the negative terminal, this is what? Cathode. Okay, anode and cathode. Clear? Negative, positive terminal we call it as what? Anode. Negative terminal electrode we call it as what? Cathode. And this is what? Electrolytic solution. Electrolytic solution. Okay, and for example, if you take here electrolytic solution I have taken, NaCl solution I have taken, NaCl solution. For example, if you take the NaCl solution, in its aqueous solution, how the NaCl will be present? In the form of Na plus ions and Cl minus ions. As I told you already, at anode what process takes place? Oxidation process takes place. So let us see what will happen. At anode what will happen? So oxidation of which ions? This is what important. See, anode means is a positive terminal. Towards a positive terminal, towards a positive electrode, which ions will be attracted? So towards a positive always negative ions will attract. What we call the negative ions? Anions. So anions are always be attracted by anode. Cations are always be attracted by cathode. Okay, so at anode which ions can be oxidized? Anions will be oxidized. So let us take Cl minus ions. The 2 chloride ions will undergo oxidation, and they liberates what? Chlorine gas and removal of electrons. So here chloride ions are oxidizing into what? Chlorine gas. Now at cathode what will happen? If you see the cathode, so towards the cathode cations will be attracted. So cations are what? Na plus ions. The 2 Na plus ions will gain these 2 electrons, undergo reduction, and they deposit as what? 2Na solid. Here sodium ions are getting reduced into what? Sodium solid. So both de-electronation and electronation. Clear? So likewise we can deposit here at anode which gas was deposited? Chlorine gas was deposited. At cathode sodium was deposited. And this process of deposition of the substances at electrodes by passing electricity via external sources like batteries. And this process we call it as what? Electrolysis. Electrolysis process. Okay, in electrolytic solution, if there was only one cation or only one anion, definitely that ion will be deposited at the electrodes. Suppose in the solution, in sometimes there was a chances of presence of more than one cation or more than one anion. So in case of presence of multiple ions, then which ions will be deposited or which substance will be deposited at the electrodes after we pass the electricity through them? Let us see. See, in case of multiple ions, in case of presence of two or more ions, then the ions having low discharge potential, the ion which are having low discharge potential will deposit first. So which ion will deposit first? The ion having least or lowest discharge potential, that ion will deposit first. Then how do you know that this ion having lowest discharge potential and that ion having high discharge potential? We have an order of discharge potentials. Okay, let us see. In case of, if you take the anions, the decreasing order of anions is fluoride ion having highest discharge potential among all anions, fluoride. Next one, sulfate ion. Next one, nitrate ion. Okay, next one, chloride ion, hydroxide ion. Next, chloride. Next, bromide. Next, iodide. This is the order of discharge potentials of anions. So, for example, in the electrolytic solution, both nitrate ion and bromide ion both are present. Okay, nitrate to bromide. Which will deposit? Nitrate or bromide? Yes, of course. Among this nitrate and bromide, bromide is having the lowest discharge potential. The ion having lowest discharge potential will deposit first. So, bromine gas will deposit at electrodes. So, this is a decreasing order of discharge potentials of anions. Similarly, the decreasing order of discharge potentials of cations, let us see. So, it's nothing but electrochemical series. In the previously all we discussed that electrochemical series. The same order will come: lithium plus ion, potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, aluminium, zinc, iron, nickel, tin, lead, hydrogen, mercury, copper, silver, gold. See, after copper, mercury will come. So this is a order of discharge potentials of cations. In the same order only the electrochemical series. In electrochemical series, based upon their oxidation potential values, we arrange the metal ions. The same order will come: lithium, potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, aluminium, zinc, iron, nickel, tin, lead, hydrogen, copper, mercury, silver and gold. So this is what order of discharge potentials of cations. Okay, I hope you understood the process of electrolysis. And one more thing, finally, if you take an example, if the water gets hydrolyzed, what are the gases liberates at anode and cathode? Let us see. See, if water gets electrolyzed, okay, then it liberates hydrogen gas and oxygen gas. The question is, at anode which gas will liberate? At cathode which gas will liberate? See, as we know, in water, if you see the mechanism of water first decompose into H plus ions and OH minus ions. So the cations are what? H plus ions, and the cations are attracted by the cathode. So at a cathode which gas will liberate? Hydrogen will liberate. So at a cathode hydrogen gas will liberate. At anode, oxygen gas will liberate. You may get the doubt. OH minus ions are attracted by the anode. Then how the O2 gas will liberate? See, the 4 OH minus ions will convert it into what? 2H2O and O2 gas. By losing electrons, they deposited oxygen at anode. So this is the best example for the electrolysis process. And one more thing, if you see the mechanism of electrolysis, see what is the flow direction of electrons in electrolytic cell. If you see here at anode which process takes place. So this is what? 2 chloride ions liberating chlorine gas and 2 electron means de-electronation. So de-electronation. So electrons are removed. So flowing in this direction. So electrons are flowing in this direction and entering into the solution via cathode. See, electrons are going away from the solution through anode and again entering into the electrolytic solution via cathode. So what is the flow of electrons? Electrons are flowing from anode to cathode. So electrons are moving from anode to cathode. If electrons are moving from anode to cathode, then what is the direction of electricity? As we know, if electrons are moving from left to right, then the direction of electricity will be right to left. Both are opposite. If electrons are moving from anode to cathode, then the direction of electricity will be cathode to anode. So this is very important question in NEET examination. Okay, so this is about electrolysis. Next, laws of electrolysis. Laws of electrolysis. The scientist Michael Faraday introduced the laws of electrolysis to give the quantitative relationship between the amount of the substance deposited at electrodes versus the quantity of the electricity that we supplied. So he gave the quantitative relationship between the mass of the substance deposited versus the quantity of the electricity that we supplied. So in that laws of electrolysis, he gave 2 laws. In that the first one is first law, Faraday's first law. See, laws of electrolysis proposed by Michael Faraday, and he gave the quantitative relationship between weight of substance deposited and quantity of electricity supplied. Okay, between these 2 variables, he gave the quantitative relationship. Let us see the Faraday's first law. What is exactly the statement of Faraday's first law? According to the Faraday's first law, the mass or the weight of the substance deposited at electrodes is directly proportional to the quantity of electricity that we supplied through the electrolytic solution. So if you supply more quantity of electricity, it will deposit more amount of the substance at electrodes. If you supply lesser quantity of electricity, lesser amount of substance will deposit. So both are directly proportional. So according to the Faraday's law, the amount of substance at electrolyte deposited at electrodes directly proportional to the quantity of electricity supplied. So they both are directly proportional. So the amount of substance deposited we consider as what? W, weight of the substance deposited, is directly proportional to the quantity of electricity. So generally the electricity we represent with Q. So where W is equal to weight of the substance deposited, Q is nothing but what? That electricity that we supplied. So since we know that Q is nothing but C into T, where current is in amperes, time is in seconds, we should take. Current into time, current in amperes, time in seconds. If you substitute here, weight is proportional to C into T. So if you remove this proportionality constant, W is equal to E C T. Proportionality constant E. What this E stands for? E is nothing but electrochemical equivalent. Electrochemical equivalent. Let us see what is the story about electrochemical equivalent. It plays a vital role here. What is electrochemical equivalent exactly? So electrochemical equivalent is nothing but, suppose you just imagine when you pass the current of 1 ampere current by the time of 1 second, then what that is equal to 1 coulomb. If you supply the electricity of 1 ampere for 1 second, total how many coulombs will supply? 1 coulomb. When you supply the 1 coulomb of electricity, when both C into T, C is 1, T is also 1. If both C and T are 1, then small e is equal to W now. So how you define now? When electrochemical equivalent is nothing but the weight of the substance deposited at electrodes by supplying how many coulombs? 1 coulomb of electricity through it. Then that is called what? Electrochemical equivalent. Let us see what is electrochemical equivalent. How we define it first. It's nothing but the weight of substance deposited at electrodes, the weight of substance deposited at electrodes by passing 1 ampere of current by 1 second. If we supply 1 ampere by 1 second, it's nothing but 1 coulomb. So the weight of the substance deposited at electrodes by passing 1 coulomb of electricity through its electrolytic solution. That amount we call it as what? Electrochemical equivalent. So W is equal to E. Why? Because W is equal to E into C into T becomes what? So W is nothing but E. It is the amount of the substance deposited when we pass the 1 coulomb of electricity. Okay. So next term we need to know about Faraday's. What is a Faraday? Faraday. So Faraday is nothing but, as like mole concept, here also we can draw a Faraday is nothing but, it is the charge carried by, we can define the Faraday in so many ways, charge carried by 1 mole of electrons. So what is the Faraday definition? It is the charge carried by how many moles of electron? 1 mole of electron. The total charge we call it as what? Faraday. And that value is equal to 96,500 coulombs. 1 mole of electrons carrying how much of charge? 96,500 coulombs. So 1 Faraday is equal to always 96,500 coulombs. Okay. Or else, when we supply 1 Faraday of electricity, okay, how many grams or how much amount of the substance will deposit? Always remember that 1 Faraday always will deposit 1 gram equivalent weight of the substance. It's always equal to its gram equivalent weight of the substance. So 1 Faraday is always be equal to gram equivalent weight of substance. Gram equivalent weight of substance. Okay, so suppose if you take few examples, 1 Faraday will deposit or liberates following. Let us see. 1 Faraday will deposit 1 Faraday. When you supply the 1 Faraday, how many weights of the following substances will deposit? If you take the hydrogen, what is the gram equivalent weight of hydrogen? 1 gram. So 1 Faraday always will deposit 1 gram or 11.2 liters of hydrogen. So 1 gram is equal to molecular weight is what? 2 grams. 2 grams occupies 22.4 liters. Then 1 gram will occupy 11.2 liters. So 1 Faraday always will deposit or liberate how many grams or volume of hydrogen? 1 gram or 11.2 liters. If you take what is that? Oxygen, if you take, always will deposit 8 grams or 5.6 liters of oxygen, and it will always deposit 1 Faraday always will deposit 35.5 grams or 11.2 liters of chlorine. Okay, and 1 Faraday always will deposit 23 grams or 23 grams of sodium. Why? Because sodium is always be solid, it cannot be exist as a gas. And it always deposit 9 grams of aluminium. Why? Because its gram equivalent weight of aluminium was 9 grams. And it always deposit 108 grams of silver. 108 grams of silver. And it always deposit 9 grams of water. So these all are what? These all weights are what? They gram equivalent weights. Simple. If you understand this logic, you can easily write. 1 Faraday always will deposit its gram equivalent weight of the substance at electrodes. So once again, 1 Faraday is equal to how many coulombs? 96,500 coulombs. It's nothing but the charge carried by 1 mole of the electrons. And it always deposit how many grams? It's a gram equivalent weight of the substance. 1 Faraday always will deposit gram equivalent weight of the substance. Now, see that I told you already, 1 Faraday is equal to how many coulombs? 96,000, or else 1 Faraday always will deposit its gram equivalent weight. I told you, gram equivalent weight is nothing but E. 1 Faraday always will deposit its equivalent weight of the substance. And what is the charge of 1 Faraday? The charge carried by 1 mole of electron, that is equal to 96,500 coulombs will deposit gram equivalent weight of the substance. How many coulombs? 96,500 coulombs. Then the amount of the substance deposited by 1 coulomb of electricity, what we call? We call it as gram electrochemical equivalent. So if 96,500 coulombs deposit E, then 1 coulomb will deposit, then it will be E by 96,500. Okay, so it is nothing but small e. So here it's nothing but the weight it's nothing but E, small e. The amount of the substance deposited when we pass 1 coulomb of electricity, what we call electrochemical equivalent. So then E is equal to E by 96,500. 96,500 is nothing but we can write Faraday, F. So small e is equal to capital E by F. Small e is nothing but what? E by F. Simple. Electrochemical equivalent is nothing but the ratio between gram equivalent weight and F, 96,500. Since we know that equivalent weight is nothing but M by N factor. So in the place of this, you can also write E is equal to M by NF. E is equal to M by NF. So now substitute this E value in that equation. So if you substitute here, final equation, W is equal to ECT, we know that according to Faraday's first law. Now in the place of E, you substitute E by F. So weight is equal to ECT by F, or else in the place of E, M by N you can write MCT by NF. It's very important formula. Okay, so they can ask the objective questions on these formulas. According to Faraday's first law, the weight of the substance deposited electrodes is directly proportional to what? Quantity of electricity supplied. So W is proportional to Q, W is proportional to CT, W is equal to ECT. So where E is nothing but electrochemical equivalent, it is always be equal to E by F. If we substitute that, W is equal to ECT by F. Equivalent weight is nothing but molecular weight divided by its n factor. So if we substitute the E formula here, W is equal to MCT by NF, where M is equal to its molecular weight, current, C is nothing but current in amperes, time is what? 1 seconds, N is nothing but N factor, not number of moles, N factor, F is nothing but what? Faraday. So this is about the Faraday's first law. So in case of metal ions, let us take a metal ion. There is M plus N. What is the charge of that metal? M plus N. And it requires N electrons to deposit that electrode as a solid. M plus N ions will gain N electrons and they deposit it as what? MS, solid M. See here, to deposit 1 mole of metal ions into metal, 1 mole required how many moles of electrons? N moles of electrons. 1 mole of metal to deposit as a solid, it requires N moles of electrons. The charge carried by 1 mole of electrons, what we call what? Faraday. Here how many moles of electrons? N moles. So what is the charge, total charge required? N Faradays. So here in this case, to deposit 1 mole of metal solid deposited by how many Faradays? Deposited by N Faraday. To deposit 1 mole of this metal solid, how many required? N Faradays of electricity. Let us take few examples. Na plus ions. Na plus 1 electron gives rise to Na solid. Here to deposit 1 mole of the sodium ion, how many Faradays required? 1 Faraday required. So here 1 Faraday required. For example, Mg plus 2 ions if you take. Here to deposit this magnesium solid, how many? 1 mole required what? 2 moles of electron. So it requires what? 2 Faradays of electricity. Suppose if you take aluminium ion. To deposit 1 mole of the aluminium, okay, how many moles of electrons required? 3 moles of electrons. So it requires what? 3 Faradays of electricity required. So always the quantity of electricity required to deposit 1 mole of the metal is always be equal to its N factor value. Here, what is the N factor value of Al plus 3? 3. Magnesium plus 2? 2. Na plus 1. So the quantity, the number of Faradays required to deposit 1 mole of any metal ion is always be equal to its N factor. Okay, so this is about Faraday's first law. Let's move to the Faraday's second law. Faraday's second law. Yes, what is a Faraday's second law? So if you pass the same quantity of electricity, the quantity of electricity remains the same. When you pass the same quantity of electricity through different electrolytic solutions, at a time we are taking 3 or 4 different electrolytic solutions, and we make sure that all the electrolytic solutions are in series combination. So when you supply the same quantity of electricity through different electrolytic solutions which were connected in series, then the ratio of the masses substances are deposited at their electrodes, or the weights of the substance deposited at their electrodes are in the ratio of their equivalent weights. So let us take, I am taking here 3 solutions. Copper sulfate, nickel sulfate, silver sulfate. 3 different electrolytic solutions. These are the 2 electrodes, and these 2 are connected. These 2 are connected, and these two are connected to the external source. See, these three are in series combination. Clear? What he said, the weight of the substance deposited, weight of copper. Weight of, why? Because copper sulfate on electrolysis, copper will deposit electrode. So weight of copper is to weight of nickel deposited is to weight of silver deposited. Means the ratio of weights of the substances deposited at electrodes are in the same ratio of their equivalent weights. Equivalent weight of copper, that is what, ECu is to ENi is to E silver. The ratio of weights of the substance deposited are in the same ratio of their equivalent weights. So we can write likewise, or else you can also write, suppose if only two electrolytes are there, W1 by W2 is equal to E1 by E2. So suppose if only two electrolyte solutions are connected, W1 by W2 is equal to E1 by E2. Likewise also we can write, or else we can also write this same equation as WCu by ECu is equal to WNi by ENi is equal to W silver by E silver. The ratio of weights to the equivalent weight of a metal is always be equal to the weights and equivalent weights of other metals, and this ratio always be equal. So in these three ways we can express the second law. So what is second law? So when we supply the same quantity of electricity, here I am writing the statement of this one, when the same quantity of electricity pass through different electrolytic solutions that are connected in series, then the weights of substances deposited at electrodes are in the ratio of their equivalent weights. E stands for what? Equivalent weights. So this is a statement, these are the formulas. I hope you understood these laws of electrolytes, that is a Faraday's laws. It's very, very important concept. Okay, so be alert in this concept and practice well the objective questions related to the Faraday's first law and second law. Next, let us move on to the concept of batteries. Now, batteries. So what are exactly batteries and how many types of batteries are there and what process exactly taking place in batteries? Let us see. As we know, batteries are nothing but, we are using these batteries as a source of EMF. We are using these batteries as what? Source of EMF. We know that whenever we need a external source of electricity, we will connect this to the batteries. And nowadays in a regular life also we are using the batteries in so many ways. So batteries we are using in remotes, okay, baby toys, and also in wall clocks, even wristwatches, okay, in so many purposes we are using these batteries. Okay, so in this concept we are going to discuss how many types of batteries are there and what is a mechanism going on in each kind of batteries. So batteries are nothing but they are the sources of batteries, sources of EMF. And battery, exactly, if you see, it's a kind of, it's like what? It's an electrochemical cell. So battery is one kind of what? Electrochemical cell. It's not an electrolytic cell. Electrolytic cell means they converts electrical energy into chemical energy. But batteries are what? Electrochemical cells. What is the role of electrochemical cells? These electrochemical cells converts what? Chemical energy into electrical energy. Electrochemical cells converts chemical energy into electrical energy. Generally, a single electrochemical cell or many number of electrochemical cells connected in series can use as a battery as a source of EMF. It depends upon our voltage required. Suppose if we need a lesser quantity of voltage, we use only one. Suppose if we wanted to increase the voltage that we need, then two or more than two cells are connected in series, we can use as an high voltage purposes. So a single unit cell or many cells are connected in series can used as what? Source of EMF. So, and these batteries we are classifying into two types. The first type is primary batteries. Second one is secondary batteries. Primary batteries and secondary batteries. So primary batteries also we call it as non-rechargeable batteries. Okay, they are non-rechargeable batteries. Whereas secondary batteries are what? Also called rechargeable batteries. So based upon the ability can recharge again or not, based upon that, batteries are of two types, primary batteries and secondary batteries. If we clearly see the differences between the primary batteries and secondary batteries, primary batteries are single usage batteries. Once in this primary batteries, the reaction occurs only once. After use over a period of time, we cannot recharge it again. So the cell will completely dead and we cannot going to use it again. So it's an primary batteries are what? Single usage batteries. There the reaction takes place only once. So once the reaction was over or use over a period of time, the cell was dead and we cannot be reuse it again. So that batteries we call it as what? Primary batteries. And examples for this primary batteries, two cells are there. One is Lagrange cell. So this Lagrange cell is the name of the scientist. Lagrange cell. Also we call it as a dry cell. Dry cells. The batteries that we are using in transistors, remotes, or else wall clocks. Okay, batteries, Nipo batteries. So all are what? Lagrange cells, dry cells. The second one is mercury cell. And this mercury cell, wristwatches, okay, or else where we use, that's the best example, wristwatches is the best example for mercury cells. Okay, so these are the two cells comes under what? Primary batteries. Now come to the secondary batteries. What are secondary batteries? In the name itself, it's a rechargeable battery. So it's a multi-usage batteries. The secondary batteries are what? Multi-usage batteries. Suppose here the reaction takes place in multiple times. Suppose first in one single reaction discharge of battery takes place. After this battery was discharged, again if you connect it to the external source, okay, again that battery will be recharged again. And after it was recharged, again we can discharge it, we can use it. So it's a reusable battery. Secondary batteries are what? Multi-usage batteries are reusable batteries. So after once the cell was discharged, we can again recharge it again by connecting to the external source. Okay, so based upon the number of times we are going to use primary batteries and secondary batteries. And for secondary batteries, lead acid batteries, zinc cadmium batteries. So two types of batteries we will discuss in secondary batteries. So now let us we discuss these four types of batteries. Four examples. I told you for primary batteries, two examples, Lagrange cell and mercury cell. For secondary batteries, lead storage batteries, and the third one is zinc cadmium batteries. So or nickel cadmium batteries. These all four batteries we are going to discuss under the concept of batteries. So the first one is Lagrange cell, also called what? Dry cell. So this dry cell is a what type of battery? It's a primary type of battery. So in this dry cell, we are using zinc container as an anode. Zinc container as what? Anode. And graphite rods. Graphite as cathode. But graphite is surrounded with MnO2. So C plus MnO2 we are using combiningly as what? Cathode. And between the anode and cathode, to connect this, we are using electrolytic solution. As an electrolyte, what we use? Paste of ammonium chloride and zinc chloride. This mixture we are using as an electrolyte between the anode and cathode. Okay, so what is the anode in a Lagrange cell? Zinc container is directly acting as what? Anode. And graphite, and it was connected surrounded by MnO2 is used as what? Cathode. And electrolyte is a paste of ammonium chloride and zinc chloride. So what will happen? So at anode what will happen? I told you at anode always oxidation takes place. So zinc will undergo oxidation. Zinc becomes what? Zn plus 2 plus 2 electrons. Now at cathode what will happen? At cathode which process takes place? Reduction takes place. So which will reduce here? At cathode graphite and MnO2 both are present, but MnO2. So MnO2 plus 2 NH4 plus or NH4 plus 2 electrons will converts into magnesium oxyhydroxide or manganese oxyhydroxide, and ammonium ions are coming out as ammonia gas. Here MnO2 will reduce into what? MnOOH. What is the name of this one? Manganese oxyhydroxide. Manganese oxyhydroxide. So if you see the oxidation state of manganese here manganese is in +4 oxidation state. Here manganese is +3 oxidation state, decreasing from 4 to 3. Decrease in the oxidation state, what we call reduction. So here manganese is undergoing reduction here. Okay, so if you add both, so cathodic reaction and anodic reaction, the overall reaction will be here 2 electrons will cancel out. So what is remaining? Zinc plus MnO2 plus NH4 plus ion will come out as what? Zn plus 2 MnOOH and ammonia gas. Here ammonium ions are liberating as what? Ammonia. And this formed ammonia will act as a ligand, and it forms a complex with zinc ion, and they forms tetraamine zincate, a zinc complex they form. And its voltage, the voltage range between 1.2 to 1.5 volts. So we use generally this dry cell or Lagrange cell in wall clocks and transistors. So it's the first cell, that is what? Dry cell. Next move on to the second cell, mercury cell. Mercury cell. It is also a type of primary type of battery, and here we are using zinc amalgam as anode and mercuric oxide with zinc oxide, or mercuric oxide with carbon is used as what? Cathode. Mercuric oxide as plus with the combination of graphite we are using as cathode, and zinc amalgam as anode. What is the electrolyte here? Here the electrolyte is the paste of KOH and zinc oxide. The paste of potassium hydroxide and zinc oxide we are using as what? Electrolyte. Let us see the process, what happens at anode and cathode. At anode, what will happen? Let us see. At anode, zinc amalgam means zinc plus zinc Hg. It's an alloy of zinc and mercury. But here zinc will actively participate. So this zinc, the zinc amalgam, the zinc which was present in the amalgam will react with OH ions. Zinc plus 2 OH minus ion. Here OH minus ions are there, na? So it will reacts with OH minus ions, and it will come out as what? Zinc oxide and H2O and 2 electrons. Here it is liberated, de-electronation takes place. So at cathode, what will happen? At cathode, so what is at cathode? Mercuric oxide is there, and this mercuric oxide will react with this H2O and gaining the 2 electrons, and it will deposit as Hg solid, and they will come out as 4 OH minus ions. So not 4 OH, 2 OH minus ions. And if we add all, the overall reaction will be 2 OH minus cancel, and 2 electrons will cancel. So what is remaining? That is zinc and HgO plus H2O. Zinc, HgO plus, H2O cancel. So no H2O. Zinc plus HgO gives rise to zinc oxide plus Hg. That means zinc is undergoing oxidation into zinc oxide. Mercuric oxide is undergoing reduction into mercury. So in the overall reaction, there was no ions. There was no ions in the overall reaction. So because of no ions in the overall reaction, here this cell, mercury cell, will maintain the constant voltage throughout of its life. When you buy that cell, how much voltage was there, the same voltage will maintain until it was dead. Okay, so the usual voltage range is 1.35 volts. So we generally use this mercury cell in wristwatches. Okay, so this is about the 2 primary batteries. One is Leclanche cell, another one is mercury cell. Okay, so today topic is over. The remaining the type of secondary batteries we will discuss in the next video. Until then, take care.